Addressing the inaugural session, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi expressed appreciation to the role played by the bank in addressing development issues in Africa, especially in light of the mounting global economic challenges. The story. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi expressed on Tuesday his appreciation to the role played by the African Development Bank in addressing development issues in Africa, especially in light of mounting global economic challenges. Addressing the inaugural session of the African Development Bank Group's annual meeting in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, President el-Sisi reiterated that Cairo is in continuous support of the efforts to achieve economic development in the continent. He said such meetings offer a chance to exchange expertise to face climate change repercussions, adding that drought repercussions have caused $70 billion of losses in Africa. The president asserted that climate change consequences are most pressuring on least developed nations, adding that mounting challenges and post-COVID consequences facing the world are clear to all. The head of state called on financing institutions to reconsider conditions that qualify countries for loans. He said the private sector should be encouraged to finance environmentally friendly schemes in Africa. President el-Sisi highlighted the role played by the AFDB in finding financing solutions that are suitable to the needs of the continent and the climate change effects it is facing. On the sidelines of the African Development Bank Group meeting in Sharm el-Sheikh, President el-Sisi held a number of meetings. Here's the story. The president held talks with Burundian Prime Minister, who thanked him for Egypt's continued support to his country to provide its development needs, as well as Egypt's stance in backing Burundi on all regional and international forums. The meetings also tackled latest regional developments of mutual concern, especially that related to the Great Lakes, East Africa and the Nile Basin. Separately, the President Sisi met with the President of Comoros, Azali Assoumani, who is the current President of the African Union. President el-Sisi said Egypt is willing to convey its experience in leading the African Union to the Comoros and to activate joint cooperation with the Comoros in different fields. For his part, President Azali appreciated leading Egyptian governments and people's roles in the African continent. The two leaders exchanged points of view over pressing African issues and continued consultations over finding solutions for African crises. Also, President el-Sisi met with Zimbabwe's President Emerson Mnangagwa, stressing Egypt's keen interest to boost relations with Zimbabwe in trade exchange and investments, whether at a bilateral level or as part of the Common Market for Eastern and Southern African countries, COMESA. President el-Sisi said that cooperation fields with Zimbabwe include technical capabilities building and infrastructure support, as well as coordination and consultations on the leadership level over joint African action issues. For his part, President Mnangagwa said he was looking forward to enhancing bilateral ties with Egypt, notably in economic and commercial fields. Appreciating President el-Sisi's role in tackling African issues and expressing willingness to boost integral efforts with Egypt in facing African challenges. And President el-Sisi met with the head of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki, during which they discussed main topics raised on the African Union's agenda, notably economic integration, regional engagement, peace and security, and the institutional reform of the AU. The two sides agreed on continuing close coordination in light of Egypt's position as a key driver for joint African action in order to tap on the leading Egyptian political and development role in serving African continent's interests effectively. Also, President el-Sisi met with Nordos Bekele Thomas, the CEO of the new Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, the economic development arm of the African Union. The meeting followed up the implementation of priorities set by Egyptian presidency of the NEPAD program between 2023 and 2025 through securing needed financial resources for continental projects within Africa's 2063 development agenda. The president held another meeting with COMESA Secretary General Kelechi Mbato Kempawe. The meeting followed up in the implementation of the most important priorities for the current Egyptian presidency of the COMESA, including strengthening regional supply chains among the COMESA countries, maximizing industrial integration, increasing investment in cross-border infrastructure and interconnection projects. The two sides tackled consultations needed to guarantee a smooth delivery of the COMESA presidency from Egypt to Zambia. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli asserted on Tuesday that it was time for the world to look at Africa as a priority for development projects. The Prime Minister made this assertion during his participation in a high-level presidential dialogue session about the structure of the changing global financial system and the role of the multilateral development institutions. Madbouli stressed that the African continent needs a huge amount of financing, about $2 trillion, over the next 10 years to deal with climate change issues and sustainable development goals, as well as $100 million annually for infrastructure projects. The session was held during activities of the African Development Bank Group's annual meetings in Sharm el-Sheikh. The African Development Bank Group meetings are held under the theme Mobilizing Private Sector Financing for Climate and Green Growth in Africa. The inaugural session witnessed the participation of a number of African presidents, government heads, and various representatives of the regional institutions. A number of finance ministers, private sector representatives, academics, and partners of the AFDB Group's member states also attended the session. Addressing the event, Egypt's central bank governor Hassan Abdullah expressed hope that the AFDB Group's meetings will materialize a future mechanism to deal with all issues. He called for finding new financing mechanisms to boost the abilities of African countries before challenges. Abdullah noted that Africa is not far from global challenges, which highlights the role shouldered by regional and international financing institutions concerned with development issues on the continent, including AFDB. In his address to the session, Akinwumi Adesina, the African Development Bank Group's president, warned against repercussions of climate change on Africa. He said losses due to the phenomenon are calculated at between $7 and $15 billion, adding that the bank is contributing with 40% in the financing of climate initiatives, as well as to launch of a program to speed up the rehabilitation with climate change in Africa. He said the AFDB seeks to establish a number of water treatment sanitation stations around the world. Adesina hailed Cairo's support in this field over its decision to turn to renewable energy. Minister of Defense and Military Production, General Mohammed Zaki, witnessed on Tuesday via video conference the implementation on the main phase of the Tactical Mobilization Command Center project affiliated to an Air Defense Forces formation. Minister Zaki discussed with participants in the two projects the management methods adopted to various situations. The minister hailed the decision taken by leaders and officers. The project is being conducted over several days. The second session of the Economic Access of the National Dialogue resumed on Tuesday. Over two sessions, the Industry Committee discusses challenges to nationalizing the Egyptian industry. The Local and International Private Investment Committee reviews analyzing the investment climate in addition to challenges facing the sector. Last month, the first session of the Economic Access, which includes 8 subcommittees, discussed means of drawing up Egypt's tourism map and fundamentals, as well as aspects of tourism investment in the future. The Interior Ministry organized 2 training courses in the field of combating crimes of violence against women and human rights. The training courses have been organized in coordination with the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime and the Spanish Embassy in Cairo. This came within the framework of the ministry's keenness to raise the capabilities of elements and students in the police academy, in addition to a number of officers concerned with combating crimes of violence against women and human rights. In regional news, explosions again shook Sudan's capital on Tuesday, dimming hopes that the U.S. and Saudi-brokered humanitarian ceasefire will take hold on the ground after more than 5 weeks of fighting. Residents reported